Welcome to Between Us. I'm your host, Joe Chap, the Red Alert podcast on Apple, Spotify, all that stuff. We are on the Between the Whistles Sports YouTube page. The draft is here, and if you are listening to this on a Wednesday, this is probably going to post around 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. We are a day away from the draft, and there's a lot of things that are going to happen in the next 24 hours that are going to be just crazy. Obviously, we know that there has been trades going on throughout the NHL, and you know, the Red Wings have not been involved. The one player that was connected to the Detroit Red Wings, Alex DeBrincat, Pierre LeBrun, he had an article on the Athletic stating that Detroit felt that they weren't close to a deal with Ottawa, and that Dallas is one of the teams that he would greenlight an extension to. Well, they have a lot of salary cap that they would have to get rid of to get Alex DeBrincat, so it still feels like the leverage is in Detroit's corner. That's just something that I think people have been monitoring that, Ottawa's going to come with a stiff price because Alex Brinkett is a really good player. The issue is that Ottawa doesn't have the leverage that they think they have because the teams that they are talking to, Dallas, Vegas, those teams have no cap. So they're gonna have to move players in order to make this happen. And Detroit has a cap to make it happen. It's just whether Pierre Dorian wants to dance with Steve Eisman. And listen, if I was Dorian, I wouldn't. But look, if Dorian is going to Steve Eisman saying, "Look, I want your ninth pick," you can get bent because I don't think Stevie is going to do that. And I think that the 17th pick is up for play, and there's some prospects that might be up for play. But Stevie knows what he's doing, and he said it in the press conference that whatever trade he makes, it has to make sense for the Detroit Red Wings moving forward and into the future. So that is something to keep in mind when we are talking about trades in the draft. And I think that Stevie Weiss still will pull a trade or two off at the draft. Now, we are going into the NHL draft. We know that there's a lot of players that, are probably pegged to where they are. The mock draft from Kevin Weeks on ESPN.com. Obviously, you have Connor Bedard going number one. That's an obvious choice. We know that. Adam Fintelli to Anaheim. That's what he has. Leo Carlson to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Mitch Koff to the San Jose Sharks. So the top four really didn't change that much. When you get to the fifth one, this is where I was like, wow. And this is where we're gonna kind of start because the fifth pick is probably where this draft will start for the NHL in terms of we know what the top four is potentially going to be. I think this draft is going to be mayhem. I think we're going to see a lot of stuff happen that we didn't expect to happen. But in this draft, the Montreal Canadiens drafted Kobe Barlow, the left winger, out of the Owen Sound, fifth overall. And this was a guy that I had pegged to the Detroit Red Wings at 17 because I thought he would be there. But Kobe Barlow is a guy who kind of compares to a Jamie Benn. He had played in 59 games last year, 79 points, 46 goals, 33. He's a he is a total. He could be potentially he could be a game changer for the Canadians, but I thought that was a little early. But obviously, he has Will Smith going to the Arizona Coyotes at 6'7". David Rottenbacher. That's a guy that I would like to see Detroit get at 17. Obviously, he's not going to be there. If the draft plays out this way, this is where we'll start. So they have Ryan Leonard at number 8, and this is a player that I personally love. And if he was there at 9, I would totally take him. No hands judge. He's a fantastic player. 49 games played, 42 goals, 34 assists, 76 points, U.S. National Development Team. He's a fantastic player. He's going to go to Boston College next year. He is going to be the real deal. I think he's kind of like a Matthew Tkachuk type, where he's a physical specimen. He's not polished in every single category, but he's a play-driving winger. And when you think about play-driving wingers, you think Kucherov, you think Tkachuk, you think Patrick Kane. He fires shots. His shots lethal. I love it. I think he's going to be a great player in the NHL. So if he was there at 9, I'd be totally with it. So I'll get to my rankings and then we'll go through the rest of the draft. I have 9 players that I would like the Detroit Red Wings to draft at, not I have 4 at 9, and I have I think 4 at 8. I have 4 at 17. So I'll go through them. Um, so the first one I have is Matthew Wood. Now, Matthew Wood is an interesting kind of guy because the Detroit Red Wings have had a great look at him because one of their prospects from UConn is playing with Matthew Wood. Matthew Wood was one of the guys who he was the youngest player in college hockey. He was absolutely fantastic. 35 goals, 35 games played, 11 goals, 23 assists, 34 points. He's a 6'3", 193-pound just winger, and he's absolutely phenomenal. He's a right-hand shot, so if you're worried about that type of stuff. But the thing that really gets to me is if you watch him play, and you go back and you watch Tage Thompson play, who plays for the Buffalo Sabres, and we were all keen on who Tage Thompson was for the Buffalo Sabres, they model each other to a T. Now, do I think that do I think that Matthew Wood is going to become Tage Thompson? Maybe. There's a lot of growth that he has to get to, but one of the things in the Detroit Red Wings system is that they grow these players pretty well. So a guy like Matthew Wood, playing another year in college hockey, getting a little bit better, I would say he'd be a Hobie Baker nominee next year because he is a fantastic player to watch, and he just plays the game the right way, and he's a big, skilled winger. And I think that when you look at the Detroit Red Wings system, there's a lot of undersized wingers, and you kind of, if you want to get that size, if you were to get DeBrincat, get that size, and then when you're making cup runs, you got a guy who is a bigger winger who can be more physical on the other team. Matthew Wood's my number one guy if I was at 9. And in this draft that mock draft that Kevin Weeks posted, Matthew Wood went to Detroit at 9. So that's a guy to watch out for. I know Yzerman goes against the grain, so I have a couple of other players that I think he would like at 9. So we will go through that right now. The second one is Zach Benson. He's from the Winnipeg Ice, the WHL. Left winger. The scouting comp for him is Braden Point, and that's a little bit. I hate when scouts, because this is who I talked to scouts who gave me these comps that they can potentially be. I really do hate when scouts make the comparison to an NHL, like one of the best NHL players. They do it all the time in NFL, and it's like come on, dude, like you can't be serious. Like that's just a bad kind of comparison, because how do you live up to that type of play? Braden Point's an extremely great player, and when you look at Zach Benson, he played in one of the toughest leagues, and he's had 98 points, 60 games played, 36 goals, 62 assists. He's a baller. Now, the one thing about Zach Benson is he's very small. He's a left winger. But the one thing about Zach Benson is, for as small as he is, he doesn't play small, if that makes sense, because he's kind of smarter. He uses the boards as kind of like the way he gets around. And I know a lot of people look at size as it does matter, but when you look at Detroit and you look at some of the teams that have won Stanley Cups in the past, like the Colorado Avalanche 2 years ago, they were one of the smallest teams in the NHL. So skill, speed, the kid's fast, he's elusive, he's good, and he's a baller. And I think that one thing you had to learn about some of these guys is the untapped potential that they have is worth the risk. If you're going to draft a smaller player, he's got to be skilled, he's got to be fast, and he's got to be good at avoiding contact, because that's what you have to do as a smaller player. Now, the third person that I have on my list is also from the U.S. National Development Team. And this kid has an NHL bloodline that is uncanny. His name is Gabe Perot. And now Gabe Perot, he plays in the U.S. National Development Team. He's a 5'10" winger. He's a left-handed shot. He played on a great line with Will Smith and Ryan Leonard. Ryan Leonard. So the talent he played with was off the charts. But the one thing about Gabe Perot is that he is a very skilled player. He's a heady player. He's smart. That's one of the things that Steve Yzerman really likes, a guy who is smart with the puck. And he's a guy who can play in all situations. And I think that's something that also intrigues the Red Wings, because when you hear Malone talk about, putting his players in the best positions to succeed, one of the things that makes it easier to make a player succeed is by the player being good in all the situations that you can put him in. Um, he's another player who's heading to Boston College, so you would get to see him on like the ESPN Plus, because they're always on ESPN Plus. But um, he's one of the best players. He's a guy that can play everywhere, and there's a lot to like about the guy, to be honest. Like I watched the U.S. National Development Team, and he's the guy that stood out. Obviously, when you have a dad who played in the league, you're a smarter player than most, to be honest. So I like seeing that. So Gabe Perot is a guy that I think would match the Detroit Red Wings kind of need and want. Now he's not as big as we would hope, because I know a lot of people love the six winger, but look, there's the one thing you can't teach from a lot of players is just being a high hockey IQ. That almost really jumbled me up, but that Steve Yzerman likes the guys that have the high hockey IQ. So when we look at Detroit and we look at the team and we look at what Steve Yzerman is going to do, Gabe Perot probably is on that list. My fourth guy that I have at 9 is Oliver Moore. Now, this might be a little bit of an overreach. And the comparison to Oliver Moore is someone that we have currently on the Detroit Red Wings. His name is Dylan Larkin. Now, the one thing you need to know about Oliver Moore, and I'm going to be honest with you, he played on the second line of the U.S. National Development Team. He had 26 goals, 38 assists, 64 points in 53 games. He's one of the best skaters in this draft, by far. He's one of the best skaters in this draft. The one thing that he does is he's very crafty, and what you notice is, like, a lot of people talk about Connor McDavid on his skating skills. Well, Oliver Moore broke his record at the combine, I believe. So when we talk about Oliver Moore, this is what we're talking about: the game-breaking speed, and we know that the Detroit Red Wings value the speed option. And Dylan Larkin is a great player. He's a good player, and when you could potentially have Dylan Larkin, Oliver Moore, and Marco Kasper and Andrew Kopp as your centers for next 3 to 4 years, there's a lot to like. There really is. So, Oliver Moore is a guy that, look, he could slip to 17, or he could be taken at 9. It just depends on what the Red Wings believe and what they value. And look, there's Gabe Perot, there's Oliver Moore, there's Zach Benson. Those are guys I think could be in play at 9, because I think that they all kind of match what Steve Yzerman likes in a player. We've seen it with Marco Kasper, we've seen it with Simon Edmondson, we've seen it with Sider. Like, he likes a certain type of player, and those were the 4 players that I kind of identified as a guy that Stevie Y would like. Now, if they were to keep the pick at 17, there's a couple players that I would like. Now, there's 3 here that are from Sweden, so this kind of tickles Yzerman's fancy if you would look. The first one is Axel Sandin Pelica. Pelica. Axel Sandin Pelica. And he's a defenseman. He's a right-handed shot. I talked to a few scouts who said that this kid, his floor is Tyson Barrie, and his ceiling is Erik Karlsson. Now, I told you early in the video that I do not value when people say, like, oh, this guy is Erik Karlsson. I hate it. Just don't compare a prospect to a player like that. But when it comes from a scout that I trust and I know, and he says the floor is Tyson Barrie and the ceiling could be Erik Karlsson, that's really intriguing to me. And he's a right-handed shot. Detroit needs a right-handed shot. And it would be interesting to see what the Detroit Red Wings would do with Pelica in their system, because obviously we know that they have had a wrath of, Swedish players, and Pelica would be the same to that. So that would be interesting. Now the second person that I'm gonna go to, look, he's a great player. Um, he, he's from the WHL too. He's a center, and it's Samuel Hanzik. Now, Samuel Hanzik is a guy that I was actually compared to Jamie Benn instead of Colby Barlow was compared to Matt Boldy. So I kind of confused those two earlier in the video. But if Samuel Hanzik is anything like Jamie Benn, that would be very, very intriguing. Now, one of the things that they say about Hanzik is that he needs to be more physical and he needs to be more consistent. When I look at Detroit and I look at their development program, I think they can get the most out of Hanzik to be a better player. And he played in a hard league, which is the WHL. He wasn't really a guy who was putting up the points. I believe he was hurt. No, I don't think. No, he wasn't hurt. But he in 43 games played with the Vancouver, with Vancouver in the WHL. He had 23 goals, 33 assists, 56 points, and 43 games. So, this kid can shoot. He's long, he's rangy, skilled, and he's an intriguing prospect. And like when you're at 17, I I think that Stevie Y would kind of roll the dice at a guy like that because of what he could potentially be. Because we've seen it with Lucas Raymond that he would roll the dice. Because at the time Lucas Raymond wasn't that elite player that we all thought. And he did it with Sider, he did it with Casper, and the next year they kind of rose up from what they were. So Hanzik is a guy that I think could be on their board. Now, the next guy I have is he's from God, I'm trying to pull it up. He is from Wilander, so Detroit knows him very, very well. It's Otto Sundberg. Now, Otto Sundberg he's a 5'11", 180 guy, left-handed shot. He played in the men's league. Obviously, we know who Wilander is. We've had a lot of players come from the Swedish Elite Hockey League. This is a player kind of like Marco Casper, just a little more, kind of not as polished as Casper was. He's a guy that could potentially be a guy that you would like to see on the roster. He will be on the roster, but he would have to have development at a heavy pace. And the one scout that I was talking to, he was talking about Oliver Sundberg as like an Alexander Barkov, as a guy like a top end look, and then at the lowest end maybe like a Bo Horvat, which I don't think any of us would complain with a Bo Horvat, but obviously you would love to have the Alexander Barkov, and that is the type of player that I think Stevie Y likes. Obviously, we know that they have the ultimate cheating card in Håkan Andersson over there in Sweden. So whatever he suggests, I think Yzerman will do. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with the draft and Otto Sundberg. And even if they keep the 17th pick, because honestly, the reason that I kind of cut this list short is because at the time when I was making this list, I was like, I don't think they're going to have the 17th pick. So I'm not really counting on the 17th pick because I think this could be Alex DeBrincat. So it'll be interesting. Tomorrow is going to be an interesting day. But I have one more guy, and it's Tom Wilander. Now, Tom Wilander is a defenseman from Sweden. Trying to pull, where is he at? No. Oh, Rögle. He's from Rögle. So we know where Rögle is. William Wilander played there. No, this is not Wilander. This is Wilander. And Wilander is he's going to be playing at Boston University next year. And he's one of those defensemen that can skate well and move the puck pretty well. And I really didn't like his comp of John Moreno. But there's a lot to like about him. He's a right-handed shot. He played in the Swedish league. You know, if when he goes to college hockey, he's gonna get a real acclimation to the North American ice, so that will help. Do I think that Detroit would take him? I honestly don't think he will get to Detroit because if you like look at like the teams in front of him, in front of 17, you got teams like Arizona, who's going to need defensemen, Vancouver, St. Louis, Buffalo. They all could take defensemen, to be honest. So that'll be interesting. But as we sit here on a Tuesday, it's so interesting to see to think about what could happen today as that NHL draft starts today. If you're listening to the video on a Wednesday, June 28th, it's gonna be fun. And I think this is the first year that the Detroit Red Wings have had where you can go, look, we are in the conversation for trades. You know Stevie Y is going to make the best trade possible for the team at hand and into the future. So if you're a Detroit Red Wings fan, tomorrow is going to be fun. We will be with you tomorrow. Right after the pick is done at 9, we will go with a video and I will post it straight to Facebook because we have obviously a lot to say about the pick and who they pick. And look, this draft is going to be mayhem tomorrow. It will be total mayhem. There is a lot of experts who don't know what they're doing. I was reading Bob McKenzie's top 20, and he even said on the TSN that he thinks that this is going to be the most wild draft he's ever been a part of. So if he's saying that, we can pretty much count on it. And obviously, Yzerman will be in the thick of things because Yzerman really never goes with the grain. He goes against the grain. So we will see you tomorrow on the Detroit Red Wings Red Alert podcast on Between Whistles Sports YouTube, and we'll post it to Facebook after the pick is done. We will see you tomorrow. Take care.